Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We hope you're keeping very, very safe and well. Thank you so much for joining us for our second show of the week, second of three. We're keeping our promise. We are still bringing you summer transfer window updates, despite the fact Spurs have made 6 signings and have got a 7th on the horizon very, very soon. Joining us again, we've got a real top-tier journalist. We're welcoming back another great journalist from Sky Sports. Before we introduce the main man, I'd like to have back alongside me, celebrating his 5th year Last Word on Spurs anniversary. There are rumours that you get less for attempted murder these days. We've got the brilliant Jamie Brown over at the Daily Hotspur. Jay, happy anniversary. How are you?
Thank you very much, Ricky. That was very kind of you to mention. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's been an amazing ride. Obviously, done so many of these transfer shows over the years, and as we know at Spurs, always very stressful. Always getting towards the end of August, and we're like pestering these journalists, these top journalists. Who's coming? But look, we're obviously here in 2022, and we're sat here. We're all relaxed. We're all calm. We're all very happy with what we've done, and yeah, obviously looking forward to this show. It should be a fairly calm show because we're not having to pester our guests. And when's the next signing coming? Because we're very happy at the moment. So, but yeah, thank you very much for that intro.
Absolutely delighted. And Jay, listen, 5 years down the line, you've still got the hairline in peace, still looking great. Who says Last Word on Spurs don't stress people out? And Jamie's done many very panicked Tottenham shows, as we know. We've had one, obviously, last season. We thought we lost Conte halfway through the season up at Burnley. Jamie was there for that, and thank God we're still here. We're still surviving. Joining us this week on the summer transfer window update, listen, icon at Sky Sports. He's reporting some of the biggest transfers that have come across the last 20 years. He just reminded me how many he's been doing Sky Sports. I'm not going to tell you. He can tell you himself. We've got the wonderful Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sports. Dharmesh, lovely to have you on Last Word on Spurs. How are you?
Ricky, Jamie, pleasure to be on. My debut, not as long as Jamie's been doing it. And you had to bring hairline into it, didn't you?
I promise you I was deliberate, Dharmesh. The minute I said that, I thought, how's that going to go?
But it's been 24 years anyway, if you're asking. It just ticked over 24 years at Sky Sports News.
I tell you what, you make Jamie look like he's just been born for Last Word on Spurs on that basis, I tell you. I've got to say, Dharmesh, having watched you for so many years cover Sky, and we've all been there deadline day praying Spurs get through a last-minute signing, it's an absolute delight to have you on Last Word on Spurs. And to be fair, with the nature of Tottenham in the transfer window, things are never quiet. There's always activity going on. So we're absolutely delighted to have you back on Last Word on Spurs, Jamie, and to Dharmesh. Great to have you on for your first appearance on the show. Before we get going, just a quick shout out to our sponsors over at the Beavertown Corner Pin. That is the Beavertown bang opposite your south stand at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We're very excited to get back down there this season for a number of televised screenings. Of course, we've got this weekend Stamford Bridge. We'll be asking Dharmesh a bit later on what he thinks of Tottenham's chances at Stamford Bridge, although obviously he's here for transfer news. We are, delighted to be getting back down there. Again, you can get your tickets right now for a spot at the televised away game there. Great beer, great food. Make sure you go to www.beavertownbrewery.co.uk/pages/corner-pin. Right. It is transfer time. And I must say, I find it very special saying that with Dharmesh Sheth staring at me here. Very, very weird. But we'll try and move on as we can with the show. Dharmesh, it's been a crazy, chaotic summer at Spurs. Before we do tap into that, we've had a number of listener questions come in for you. And I must say, there's already a lot of love for you in the comments here, Dharmesh. Already 500-600 of you watching us live. Makes a change covering Spurs. Just tell us what it's like, Dharmesh. You know, you've been at Sky, you said 24 years. What is it like doing transfer windows at Sky Sports?
Oh, just the busiest time of the year, without doubt. It is the most full-on time of the year. I tell you what, during January and June, July, August, it's just completely non-stop. I really enjoy playing golf. Just thought I'd bring that in. And even when I have days off, it's so horrible. I don't know whether you guys play golf, but I just want to switch off and just leave the phone in the bag. But during a transfer window, I'm always checking the phone. I just want to see what my scores are like in a transfer window and out of a transfer window, because during a transfer window, I don't think I score very well. But look, it is a really, really interesting time. It's a really chaotic time at Sky, but a really good time as well, because I've got to say, I've been doing it for I'd say about 13, 14 years now, the window properly. And still, even to this day, when I get a story, it's I still get that same buzz, some from when I got the first one. It's so good. And Tottenham actually is one of the clubs that, when I first started doing the transfer window, that's one of the clubs that I actually stood outside on deadline day. And it was quite a famous deadline day, actually. It was the summer 2008 window. I was stationed outside Tottenham's training ground, the old training ground, which was in Chigwell.
Yep.
And it was very, very dark, really dark alleyway. By the end of the night, all you could see was the light on my head. That was it. It was like a floating head on that night. And it was the night that Dimitar Berbatov went from Tottenham to Man United. And I was just sat outside the training ground. So nothing was happening there until, I think it was the same night that Fraser Campbell went the other way to Tottenham.
We're still getting treatment for that, Dharmesh. We're still getting medication for that transfer.
So I was reporting on that, but it was, even then, it was just such a buzz to be part of it. And it's still a buzz throughout the window, deadline day. It's just great. Been on Sky Sports News for that.
Yeah, well, listen, we've loved watching you, following you, watching Sky on deadline day, praying for a signing, anything at times, desperately trying to get something over the line. Let's focus on Tottenham. I mean, listen, it's been a really busy summer for Spurs. Of course, Antonio Conte leading Tottenham back into the Champions League and already flexing their spending power at the beginning of the summer. Of course, we had the signs of Ivan Perisic, Yves Bissouma, Richarlison, Clement Longley, Jed Spence and Fraser Forster. And we know there's a potential imminent arrival also of Destiny Adugi as well that will take it to 7 signings. But overall, Dharmesh, you said off air in our green room, you just, again, probably surprised by how Spurs have operated this window. It's saying that, again, for all of us here, us as fans, you covering Sky, how you do as well. I think it's been an air of real element of surprise. What have you made overall of Spurs' summer transfer window?
Very, very impressive. And the timing of their deals, I think every club goes into a transfer window wanting to get all of their business done so that they're ready to go for pre-season. And I think Tottenham did the majority of their signings. I know they had a few issues with Fraser Forster and Yves Bissouma with COVID, and they missed part of that tour of South Korea. But the other ones, like Richarlison getting him done early, Bissouma getting him done early. The Jed Spence one went on for a little while. I think some Tottenham fans were getting a little bit worried. Oh, is this back to the old days of doing a transfer for Tottenham? But wasn't the case. And I just think the one that stood out for me more than anything, because of what it signified, was Ivan Perisic. Now, 30, in his 30s, when would Tottenham make a signing like that? Because Daniel Levy usually is, what's the resale value? How many years has he got on his peak? Whereas that just is an Antonio Conte signing, which would suggest that Antonio Conte and Fabio Paratici have spoken to Daniel Levy and said, we want our business done really early. We're in the Champions League. We're shopping at a different level now. We're at a different table that we're going to shop at. And they've got a deal like Ivan Perisic done. And it was, if you're a Tottenham fan, even though he's in his 30s, I think you should be pleasantly surprised because of what it does signify. It signifies that Daniel Levy is backing Antonio Conte and he's backing Fabio Paratici. So I think I was really surprised at how quickly and efficiently Tottenham have done their business and how ready they were when the season started. And even if you go back to January, you're looking at those 2 other signings, which, have only been there for a few months, but the impact that they've made, Kulusevski and Bentancur as well. So he's going for players that he knows, players that maybe he's worked with, players from leagues that he knows. And it's bearing fruit already. Qualification for the Champions League, good start to the season. Things are looking good for Tottenham.
Absolutely.
Yeah, look, I'm probably going to sound a bit greedy with this next question. Obviously, as we mentioned, we've had a fantastic window so far. Obviously, 6 new players coming in. Looks like a 7th's going to be coming in Destiny Adugi. And that would obviously be a great sign if we get that over the line. But there have been reports that Spurs are still looking for, maybe another attacker, potentially another central defender as well. That's another name that's been linked. So kind of in your opinion, where else do you think Spurs might look to go in the remainder of this window?
The information that I've got is, the focus is on outgoings predominantly now. I'm sure we'll come to that in a moment. But the name that has been bandied around is Nicolo Zaniolo, the Roma player. Now, I think Tottenham still retain an interest in him. It's a difficult one to do, though, because Roma don't want to sell, number one. And I think Tottenham would probably want to do a deal, maybe even spend 30, 40 million pounds on him. But Roma, I think they value him upwards of 50 or 60 million pounds for him. And we know who the Roma manager is as well. How much would he want to do business with Tottenham, I wonder, with a player that he'll want to keep at the club? But make no bones about it, there is definitely an interest in Zaniolo. Whether Tottenham can get him in the remaining 3 weeks of the window, I'm not sure. But if they don't, I don't think Tottenham will be too disappointed with how the window's gone and the players that they've brought in already.
Do you mind, Dharmesh, to follow up that question, just what Jamie said there? Purely because at the moment, I know fans, there's two camps they sit in. And I think Jay sits more in the camp, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Jay, you sit more in the camp that our creativity will be driven by Spurs' wing-backs, the likes of Ryan Sessegnon, Jed Spence, Ivan Perisic, Matt Doherty. Whereas I sit in the camp that in games where you're going to have the likes of a Brentford, an Everton, a Forest, a Fulham, and please forgive me, fans of these clubs that might be watching this for Dharmesh's insight, I'm not obviously taking being disrespectful to those clubs, but when they employ a low block of 10 behind the ball, Spurs might need a special player to break them down. The likes of Zaniolo and Madison, for example.
We even saw that in pre-season, didn't we, with Roma?
Yeah.
Just struggled to break them down. So we've shown that we still, maybe that is a concern for us, isn't it, Ricky?
Absolutely, yeah. Or like a Lucas Paqueta. I mean, can you see any way, Dharmesh, in which Spurs try and go for a creative-minded player between now and the end of the window, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll be in the market to do something. Whether that would be the ultimate priority position that Conte would want to bring in is another question. But as you say, the way he plays, the creativity will come from those fullback and wing-back areas. I just think with Zaniolo, I still think that he feels that he will bring something to Tottenham for the rest of this season and beyond. Just with regard to any other players that have come in, I think there's been a change of tact as well. If you look in the past, when they've tried to sign attacking players, it's almost been a reluctance to do it simply because, one, on the attacking players' side, am I only going to get a game if Harry Kane or Son are injured? And Tottenham haven't been able to bring in the players that they probably would have wanted to bring in to strengthen the depth in that squad. But that says a lot for Conte and Paratici. The fact that someone like Richarlison, who was going to be playing every single week without fail at Everton, decided, no, I'm going to back myself. Conte wants me, and I'm going to break into this team. Of course, yeah, he didn't get a start against Southampton. But when you're talking about, the results that they had last season against the big clubs, that was when Tottenham were at their absolute best, like drawing twice against Liverpool, beating Manchester City twice as well. And it was those other games that you're mentioning there, Ricky, where maybe they did struggle to break teams down. And I guess the first test was going to be Southampton at home. If I remember correctly, it was a home defeat against Southampton.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not last season.
Yeah, it was.
And Tottenham fans must have feared the worst, because you go 1-0 down on the opening day of the season, and there's every, suggestion that maybe the fans will go, oh, goodness me, here we go again. But the performance that Tottenham turned in from being 1-0 down thereafter, I think suddenly Tottenham fans are suddenly thinking, hold on, something's happening here. And I think everyone who has been asked for their prediction, it happens all the time, doesn't it? The pundits are always asked, who's your top four? I've been asked it a few times as well. I haven't heard anybody predict a top four without Tottenham in it. And they're looking at, they're not even looking at fourth. They're saying Tottenham are going to finish third minimum. And who knows, if Liverpool or City don't have the season that they had last season, is there an opportunity maybe Tottenham can maybe split the top two? Dare I say it? Go for the title. Who knows? It wasn't long ago that Tottenham were challenging for the title. And, we were talking about this off air just before, weren't we? When we were talking about that Champions League final where it should have been the springboard for Tottenham. And I'm sure you fans will have talked about this till you're blue. That should have been the springboard to push on. They've reached a Champions League final when they least expected to. Let's build on this. But it felt like now when you look back that was the end of something, whereas you look at Liverpool, it looked like that was the beginning of something, and they really backed Jurgen Klopp from that moment on. Whereas Pochettino, I don't think it was a crazy time, wasn't it? It was like two or three windows in a row where Tottenham didn't even sign a player.
No,
and you're wondering, well, why they're not building? Why they're not building on this? I think those times have changed now. And I think Conte and Paratici have realized, yes, Harry Kane will probably start when he's fit. Son will probably start when he's fit. But we're going to bring in players that are going to push them and play alongside them rather than just waiting for them to get an opportunity if they're injured. And Conte's obviously looked at it and thought, with 4 competitions. I know Tottenham were in 4 competitions last season, but look, everyone was turning their nose up at the Conference League. And the way that competition ended for Tottenham last season, it was all COVID related. Whereas this time, it's 4 competitions and one of them is the Champions League. So they're going to need to get this big squad. Having signed those 6 players, I think Tottenham have got it.
Absolutely. And just to confirm, Dharmesh, from your perspective, I don't put words in your mouth. We shouldn't rule out the opportunity. If it comes up with a creative midfielder, we shouldn't rule it out completely.
No, I don't think you should, because I don't think we should be surprised anymore about what Tottenham are going to do in the transfer window. This is not the Tottenham of 2, 3, 4 seasons ago when fans are waiting. When are they going to make this signing? The season starts, the window's still open, and they end up doing business right at the end. It's not that Tottenham anymore. This is a Tottenham with Fabio Paratici and Conte, calling the shots and telling Daniel Levy, let's get this business done early. And they will have other targets, I'm sure, because you've got a various amount of players who are not in Conte's plans. So are they going to replace those players as well?
Absolutely. What we'll do very quickly is we'll just go for our first break of the show for our listeners and audio, for our watching audience on YouTube. Across our platforms, we've got nearly a total of 800 of you, 900 of you watching us live. So thank you so much, as always, for all your support for Last Word on Spurs during a summer transfer window update, where I'm joined by Jamie Brown, celebrating his 5th year anniversary on Last Word on Spurs, and still mentally intact, which is always a difficult challenge with Tottenham, still mentally intact. And we've got the wonderful Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sports on Last Word on Spurs. Yes, the magnitude of Last Word on Spurs, the growth of it's incredible. Dharmesh Sheth is here from Sky. Where is this channel going? Absolutely incredible. Joe, what? I am going to hand back over to Jamie to kick off the second half. Jamie has got the opportunity to ask you about Destiny Adugi. Then I'm going to come back and ask you about Antonio Conte, if that's all right with you, Jay. So we'll just hand over to Jay. Conte hasn't had a chance to come back on it. So, Jay, over to you.
Leicester. Yeah, of course. We mentioned earlier, there looks like there's going to be a 7th arrival at Spurs this summer. Destiny Adugi, obviously coming in from Udinese, a 19-year-old left wing back. Of course, a guy who looks soon to be set to become an Italian international as well. So clearly a guy who Spurs fans should be maybe excited about, one for the future. Can you kind of give us the details of this move? Of course, I think it looks like he will return online, but kind of what are the details of this one?
Yeah, this one looks like it's all agreed now with Udinese. It looks, I think it's a £15 million deal, and that could rise depending on performance-related add-ons. Just on these performance-related add-ons, when fans hear about these fees and they think, goodness me, we're going to end up paying £30 million. Is that player worth £30 million? Well, if every club bought a player and paid the absolute maximum they could for a player, that is great news. Yes, they're going to be paying a lot of money, but it's great news because this player will have achieved all of those performance-related add-ons, which will be good for him and it'll be good for the club as well. So that one looks like it's going to happen. And as you mentioned there, Jamie, he will return on loan to Udinese. We think there's going to be a medical next week. He's going to fly into the UK next week to do that medical, to finalise the personal terms. Still not clear. I haven't got the full information on what's going to happen with regard to his wages for that loan spell back to Udinese, whether Tottenham will be helping Udinese with those wages or whether they've come to an arrangement where Udinese will pay the full wages for that 1-year loan. But then he will be coming back for the start of the 2023-2024 season and be part of the first team squad under Conte.
I've got a 2-part question for you, Dharmesh, if you don't mind. Number one, listen, given that we've got 6 signings over the line so far, a 7th, which is imminent, but obviously you'll go back on, as you say there. Listen, Antonio Conte for me is a manager that never will be satisfied. He's always going to want more. But from what you hear at Hotspur Way, in and around the club, your sources at Sky, how happy do you think he is, given Spurs' summer business so far in terms of the incomings the club have made?
I think he'll be pretty satisfied, because I think he and Fabio Paratici went to Daniel Levy and said, we're in the Champions League. We've got a pre-season tour. I need to get as much of this business done as quickly as possible, because I need to mold this squad. I need to get them together. I need them understanding my philosophy, understanding the way that we're going to play. So to bring in 6 players before the start of the season, I mean, like you said before, Tottenham fans having to pinch themselves because they're just not used to a transfer window that's gone seemingly so smoothly for the club. And look, they're still in the market, as I said before, to bring in 1 or 2 other players and to streamline that squad as well. But if you ask Antonio Conte, and I'm sure he'll say it in a news conference if he was come September the 2nd when the window's closed, if he was to say, you satisfied with how the window's gone? If the window was to close tomorrow, I'm sure he would say he is satisfied with how it's gone. Did he get everyone he wanted? I mean, it's very difficult to do every single deal that you want to do in one transfer window. But judging by the number of signings he's made, the positions he's filled, and the quality of the player that he's brought in, it looks like Conte and Paratici can't have that many complaints about how it's gone.
Okay, that's fair. And then the second part of my question, you've already touched upon it briefly. We asked you about creative midfielders. There's been. I haven't directly seen Sky link us with this player, so please forgive me. We've seen James Maddison, and there's been Nicolo Zaniolo. We know there seems to be some interest in Zaniolo, but can you just confirm for us, with regards to James Maddison, from what you hear at Sky, is there any reported interest from Tottenham in this player as far as you're concerned, just on James Maddison?
Not that I've heard of directly. I've heard a few rumours here and there that maybe Tottenham should be interested in somebody like James Maddison for the reasons that you've just said there. Newcastle United were the ones that were going for him. They made a couple of bids for James Maddison, both of which were rejected. I think the latest one was around £40 million plus add-ons. And I think Leicester City were looking for more towards £60 million if they were going to sell. But the information I was getting was that Leicester didn't want to sell Maddison. They didn't want to sell Fofana. But if they were to do any kind of business, I don't think it was their intention to sell both Fofana and Maddison in the same transfer window. But look, money talks. And if Tottenham Hotspur wanted to bring in James Maddison and decided this is definitely the player that we want to go for, and met that £60 million price that Leicester may have on James Maddison, then look, it's possible that a deal could be done. But you'd have to say that if Tottenham were really, really serious about going for James Maddison, given the way that they've done their business so far in this transfer window, for someone that would command such a high transfer fee as Maddison, would they not have gone for him already? Unless they're now looking at the squad and thinking, look, second wave, let's just go and try and get him. At the moment, the information I'm getting is that there's not that interest in Maddison just now. Look, we've still got 3 weeks left. That can change. Okay,
and thank you so much for that, in terms of that clarity, Dharmesh. And before I hand you back to Jamie, just the latest update on Nicolo Zaniolo. You mentioned I mentioned him before, he seems to be a player of interest to Tottenham. Where are we with regards to that player?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there is an interest from Tottenham. Tottenham do like the player. I think there would be a gap in valuation between what Tottenham are prepared to pay for Zaniolo and what Roma would want. And we think Roma want in excess of 50 or 60 million for him. And Jose Mourinho sees him as part of his plans. They don't want to sell someone like Zaniolo. But again, money talks. And you know what, Roma, they're not getting the riches that Premier League clubs do get. So if Tottenham were to chance their arm again, who knows? But as it stands, the valuation, the gap in valuation seems to be a bit too much, but definitely an interest there from Tottenham.
Okay, and then finally, before I stop the interrogation for you, Dharmesh, and I'll hand you back over to Jamie, one more name there being mentioned by H. Shah in our comments says, big up Ricky, can you ask Dharmesh if there's any link at all with regards to Lucas Paqueta? I think he's been linked with, I think Newcastle were in the window. Anything you've heard on that one at all, Dharmesh?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk. There's been a lot of talk with Paqueta. I think a lot of it is quite agent driven. This is the information we get when we put names like this to clubs. So sometimes you get a situation in a transfer window where you hear that a club is interested, but what has actually happened is that a player might have been offered to a club. So not necessarily the interest being driven by the club itself. So anything that I'm hearing and reading like yourselves with regard to Newcastle and Tottenham, what I have been hearing is that it might have been pushed from the agent side rather than going from the other side. That's not to say that Tottenham or Newcastle United wouldn't be interested in a player like Paqueta, very, very, very good player. But information I have, this is only information I have. There'll be other people who have better contacts on this particular one. But the information I have is that, the link has been with Newcastle more than anyone else. And Tottenham is the one that's been rumoured amongst others. It's just gone dark in here. I don't know what this is. There we go.
I thought we had a flashing moment there, Dharmesh, of a lightning bolt that was going to change that mood of that way that transfer was going there. No chance, unfortunately. Thank you so much for that. Jamie, over to you for the next part of the interrogation.
You mentioned there about a Lyon midfielder. I think Spurs fans will probably have a little bit of PTSD of signing a midfielder from Lyon, because obviously the next question I'm going to ask is, obviously, I think you mentioned at the top of the show about now Spurs focusing on outgoings. Tanguy Ndombele is one of those players that they do look like they're trying to move on. Kind of where are we at with Tanguy? And then, of course, we do have a couple more to move on as well. The looks of Giovanni Lo Celso, Harry Winks, and Sergio Reguilon. Kind of, do you expect those sort of players to move on? And where are we at with the likes of Tanguy in terms of departures?
So it's the infamous four at the moment. Those four that you mentioned: Ndombele, Lo Celso, Reguilon, and Harry Winks. Now, the information that I've been given with those four is, number one, they're all training away from the first team squad. They do have squad numbers for next season, for this season, but they are all training away from the first team squad. So it shows again Antonio Conte's strength, because I'm sure Daniel Levy will look at someone like Ndombele and he would have been desperate for someone like Ndombele to work, because he's a club record signing, and it just looks like, we've spent that much money and it's not working. But it also shows, again, the backing in that form as well, because you can have backing with players that Antonio Conte wants to bring in for the likes of Perisic that I mentioned before, but also to have the strength that Conte has to say, he is not in my plans. I know he's a club record signing, and I know he's cost a lot of money, and I know he's on high wages. He is not in my plans. And I think Tottenham are very open to listening to offers for all four players. Now, with regard to Ndombele and Lo Celso, Villarreal are targeting both of those players. Be very difficult for a club like Villarreal to be able to do permanent deals for both. They know all about Lo Celso. They'd love to bring him back after his loan spell last season. He was fundamental, wasn't he, in their run to the semi-finals of the Champions League last season. So I think he loves Villarreal. Villarreal still love Lo Celso, so they'll try and do a deal there. And Ndombele as well. The information that I have is that talks are continuing between those two clubs. Initial talks have taken place. Dialogue is still open between the two clubs to try and strike a deal for those two players. There is other interest as well in Ndombele from France and from Spain, other clubs in Spain as well. I mean, he came back and said, look, I'm ready now to play for Tottenham. But Conte said, well, I am not ready for you. So you're not part of my plans. You're going to have to find another club. The other two players seems a little bit more problematic. And this is quite surprising for me, actually, because the Harry Winks situation, I think this is kind of with a heavy heart as well, potentially for Spurs, because an academy graduate, it's the last thing you want to see, someone who's come through the ranks at the club and he's not in the plans of the manager, and Tottenham are open to offers. And again, with all four players, I think Tottenham's preference is permanent deals, but the closer we get to the end of this transfer window, I think they would accept loan deals for all four of those players as well. Look, it would mean, yes, they might lose money on transfer fees and that sort of thing. But, you know, when they arrange loan deals, then clubs can pay portions of wages and things like that. So that kind of thing, you don't know how much that can do for a football club, the amount of money that can come off in the wages. So with regard to Harry Winks, no concrete offers at the moment for Harry Winks. There are still 3 weeks to go, of course. So I think Tottenham are hoping that will change. With Reguilon, I think when they decided that he wasn't in the plans and they made their decision that they were going to go with other fullbacks and wing backs at the club, I think they were quietly confident, Tottenham, that Sevilla would come in for Sergi Reguilon. Unfortunately for Tottenham, Sevilla have chosen to go down the route with Alex Telles, and they've taken Alex Telles on loan, on a straight loan, no option to buy there from Manchester United. So Sevilla have filled that position, and since then there's been no concrete offers for Sergio Reguilon. It'll just be interesting to see if they can't offload these players by the end of the transfer window, what Antonio Conte will do, whether he'll be in a situation where he'll just freeze them out, or whether he might be able to reintegrate them into the squad. Because as it stands, he's got no place for them in that squad. It'd just be a long way back for those 4 players to be reintegrated into that squad once the transfer window is closed. But make no mistake about it, all 4 players are available, and Tottenham are open to offers, and it looks like they'll take permanent, they'll take loans with options, obligations. They want them out of the club, I think.
I thought it was really interesting what you said about Villarreal going for both Tanguy and Gio. Obviously, I think it's, they're just not going to be able to happen, permanent transfers on both. But do you think there's any realistic chance that both will end up at Villarreal, or is it a case of they'll look to maybe negotiate for both and then go for maybe one or the other? Do you think there is the possibility that both could end up at Villarreal this summer?
There is a possibility. I mean, they are interested in both players, and Villarreal and Tottenham have had initial talks, and they continue to talk about both of these players. I think Tottenham probably privately will be confident of at least one of them going. I think the Lo Celso one, simply because of his history from last season, they'd be hopeful that a deal can be struck with Villarreal for that one. But I mean, look, it must be, I don't know what, you guys follow them all the time. I'm sure you were really excited when both of these players joined. And you must think, I mean, what do you think? Are you quite unhappy? Are you quite sad? Are you frustrated that it hasn't worked out for them?
I'm devastated Dharmesh hasn't worked out for Ndombele. I fought this guy's corner for far too long, to be honest with you. And I still said a few weeks ago, if only we could try and refocus him. Because I still think that kind of player is exactly what Tottenham maybe need in those games, as I mentioned. People obviously talk about, the fact that it comes to creativity from the wing backs, but sometimes you just need someone to play that diagonal pass, and Ndombele has got all the ability to do so. Gio, if I'm being honest with you, I don't think we ever saw his best form. And Jamie, feel free to say that as well. I just think his injury record was terrible at Spurs, but would be always frequently fit for Argentina. Jay, I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, that's the frustrating thing with Gio. Obviously, he goes away with Argentina, does fantastically well. Dharmesh, you mentioned earlier about how important he was in that run for Villarreal, getting to the semi-finals of the Champions League. So frustrating from that perspective. And then, of course, with Tanguy, we are talking about one of the most insanely talented footballers in the world, but he just can't seem to produce it for Spurs. And it's just so disappointing kind of seeing that talent being wasted, because we all know how talented this guy is. I don't think I've ever in my lifetime really been quite as excited about a signing than I was for Tanguy and Ndombele. It was also a statement. It was like, I think we beat top clubs to his signing as well. It kind of looked like, as you mentioned, that looked like it was going to be that real springboard moment after that Champions League final. And unfortunately, those guys just didn't work out. But yeah, so frustrating and disappointing. Those two didn't work out for Spurs, unfortunately.
It was successive managers as well, wasn't it?
Yep.
It's not been. Yeah, you're right as well. It's actually one thing maybe you could caveat is that it's not been like an easy environment for them to be at Spurs, because it's been a very turbulent time since that Champions League final. But yeah, it's a shame that we never really got to see the best of them. But I mean, it's just a very sad state of affairs that we're desperate for them to kind of leave now, because obviously the wages as well are just massive.
Oh, it's massive. I mean, there has been Dharmesh reporting just from Newcastle, hasn't there, in Ndombele? I don't know if you've noticed that. I don't know if you've heard anything like that from your perspective, Dharmesh. Newcastle, I mean, they obviously
Was that Napoli?
Napoli as well. I mean,
I don't
could
know.
you see a way? I mean, surely Spurs, if they're going to let him go, they want those wages, don't they? Surely to be covered, ideally. I mean, it's a huge wage that he's on. I think he's still one of, if not the highest paid player at Spurs now. It's incredible, isn't it, really, when you think about the amount of wages he's on?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the club that he will go to, because if they do a deal, for example, with the Villarreal, I'm not sure that they'll be able to cover all of those wages. He'd be completely broke without knowing fully well what the wage structure is at Villarreal. But if you're talking about Tonga and Ndombele being a club record signing and on the wages he might be on, you'd expect him to break the wage structure at Villarreal. And I don't know whether they would want to do that. So they'd be negotiating with Tottenham to maybe apportion some of those wages as well. So look, if he went to like a Newcastle, would Tottenham want to do business with a Premier League rival? Would it be seen as strengthening a Premier League rival? Would Tottenham consider Newcastle a Premier League rival now? So it's difficult, isn't it?
Absolutely it is. What we will just do is we will just stop for a second of the interrogation and we'll just go for our next break of the show for our listeners that are on audio. For our watching audience on YouTube, there's nearly over 1,000 of you watching us across all of our platforms. Again, massive thank you as always for all of your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. And as always here on Last Word on Spurs, we like to always promote different kind of things, and always we like to think of ourselves at the forefront of mental health. And that's why this week we're delighted to be teaming up with a team over at SFTW. Now, historically, condoms were sold in barbershops where the term "something for the weekend" was used. The SFTW brand was conceived, and excuse the pun, with initial concept of promoting general well-being and highlighting mental health issues. Incredible to think that there's been over 569 suicides in England and Wales since 2019. That's an average of 15 deaths per day, equivalent to one death every 90 minutes. And more than 700,000 people die by suicide every day, which is one person in every 40 seconds. Now, condoms help prevent over 1 million STIs that are acquired daily, and they will donate over 10% of their profits in support of mental health and good causes in the hope of making someone somewhere feel better. Free discreet delivery by Royal Mail, by second-class post, express delivery options available. Please note they're currently only delivering to addresses within the mainland UK, and they can be found at www.sftw.co.uk. As always on Last Word on Spurs, we'll try and keep that conversation going of mental health. And thank you again, as always, for all your support. I'm going to hand back over to Jamie to kickstart the show. Yep. Jamie, over to you.
Yeah, of course, another departure we're going to hopefully talk about now. Japhet Tanganga, a guy who does look, looks like Spurs maybe are trying to move on. Of course, the player himself does look like he wants to kind of go and play football as well. So kind of where we're at with Japhet Tanganga, do you kind of expect him to move on this summer at all?
So this one is slightly different to Reguilon, Winks, Ndombele and Lo Celso, because Tanganga is actually training with the first team squad. He was part of the travelling party. Well, I say travelling party. He was part of the party that was at the Tottenham against Southampton game. Didn't make the 20-man squad. Now, earlier on in this window, AC Milan definitely interested. I think AC Milan were looking at how they can exploit the English market, because they've had a bit of success there with Fikayo Tomori coming from Chelsea. And I think they thought Tanganga could have a similar kind of impact. That one kind of went quiet again. I spoke to my colleague at Sky in Italy, Gianluca Di Marzio, and at one point that looked really, really close, the AC Milan move on a loan. And what they were discussing was the potential of an option or an obligation at the end of that season. When I spoke to Gianluca again last week, he said 2 words: not hot. So it looks like that one has cooled down quite significantly, and he's back in the plans at the moment with Tottenham. And if he was to remain at Tottenham come September the 2nd, I don't think Tottenham would have that much of an issue. I think he's integrated into the squad anyway. No issues from Antonio Conte then. He'd become a good squad player for Tottenham for the rest of the season. However, they are aware and very wary of Tanganga's needs as well for regular first-team football. Is he going to get that at Tottenham this season? So they are open to offers that would be right, not only for the club, but for the player as well. So I think maybe just one to keep an eye on in the last 3 weeks, because even though he's back in the reckoning and in amongst the first team squad, I think Tottenham would listen to offers for Tanganga as well.
If Japhet was to go, do you think there's a possibility that Spurs might look to go for a central defender? And of course, the big thing with Tanganga is that he counts the homegrown player. And we know with Spurs, that is a bit of an issue in terms of having homegrown players in the squad. So do you think Spurs could look to move for a central defender and maybe even someone homegrown if Tanganga does leave this summer?
Potentially. I think with the arrival of Clement Longley, I think then Tanganga probably realised my game time is going to be quite limited. When you look at the defenders that are first choice at Tottenham, and he's simply isn't there. By his own admission, he would know that. I think he gives a little bit of versatility as far as Tottenham are concerned, but versatility probably not in the way that Conte will probably want to play. So, look, Tottenham could go in for a centre half. It's not the information that I'm getting, because I think I think we would have got a little bit more information by now that they were in the market for somebody had Tanganga got that move to AC Milan, and that wasn't forthcoming. So as it stands, with 3 weeks to go, Tanganga stays unless a deal can be manufactured. There was talk as well while the AC Milan deal was happening of Southampton and Bournemouth as well. That has kind of gone quiet as well, but you just don't know what happens with the transfer window as we approach the end of it, particularly when, you know, we've gone back to that system where the season starts and the window's still open. So you can't predict what's going to happen in those 3 or 4 games while the window is open. If teams get injuries, then they're going to go back into the market. And someone like Tanganga, if there's a centre half injury anywhere, then who knows? Towards the end of the window, he could be one that a club could pick up.
Well, clubs start looking for like maybe opportunities that arise, don't they, towards the end of the window? So that obviously could be something that maybe changes. As you mentioned, you know, circumstances might change, and then Tanganga pops up as an opportunity. So yeah, I think you're right there. Obviously, lots can change. So.
Yeah, Dharmesh, just sticking with you, just want to ask you about another Spurs player linked with an exit, and that's Bryan Hill. Now, I think you gave us a fresh update today very kindly from Sky Sports. A player that I think for us, I mean, we've seen glimpses of what he could be, what he can be, but haven't really seen it on a consistent basis. Arguably, he's gone out on loan last season, so we haven't had a chance to see him in a real Premier League level for a consistent basis. But what do your sources tell you about his future, Dharmesh?
Yeah, so he spent the second half of the last season on loan at Valencia, and I think Valencia like him. They're in talks with Tottenham as it stands now over the signing on loan of Bryan Hill again for this season. I think it's quite a clever move, this, from Tottenham, because if he doesn't fit into the plans of Tottenham, just imagine Tottenham try to sell him now at this in this transfer window. If they try to sell him, I'm not sure how much of a fee they would get for Bryan Hill. What they are doing, which is quite a clever move, is if they send him on loan to Valencia, to a league that he knows well, to a club that he knows well, say he performs well over a season and plays regularly for Valencia, he'll still be under contract at the end of that season with Tottenham. So when he comes back, if he has had a good season, it's a big if, admittedly, but if he has, look at the options available to Tottenham. The manager might think, you know what? He's proven himself. I think I can fit him into this squad. So it'll be like the proverbial new signing. Or Tottenham could say, right, he's played really well. His valuation has been maintained, if not gone up. So we can go into the market with Bryan Hill and we can get a good transfer fee for him and then put that money towards another signing. So I think it's not a massive risk, because he's going to a league, if he can get back to Valencia, that he knows very well, and a club that he knows very well. But talks are ongoing, not a done deal yet, but I'm sure Tottenham will be hopeful that one can get over the line.
Just want to ask you, before Jamie comes back in for a second, Dharmesh, just because I know Spurs fans will look at some of the loans that we've done in the last year or two. Someone like Bryan Hill, there'll be people screaming, shouting, saying, why have Spurs not given this player a Premier League loan? Why has he not gone on to a Premier League loan? is it just a case that, listen, I'm sure first and foremost, Premier League clubs would ideally love for players to go out on loan. I mean, for me, as a Spurs fan, for me, the loan of like a Brighton would make perfect sense for Brian Hill. He's playing with players of a like-minded ability. There's a certain way to the way Brighton play. That to me would make logical sense. Is it just a case where normally the club, that they would ideally love to get him on a Premier League loan so he gets Premier League experience, but there simply isn't that interest there? How do you see that scenario?
Well, if Tottenham have decided that he doesn't fit at Tottenham and maybe furthermore doesn't fit in the Premier League, then that would be a risk to send him to a club in the Premier League. Because like I was saying before, if he goes to a league and a club that he knows, he's more likely to maintain his value. So it might be more of a risk to send him on loan to a Premier League club. I'll give you an example of something that happened last season, actually, because Donny van de Beek at Manchester United wasn't figuring in United's plans at all under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, which a lot of people were finding quite bizarre. Ralph Rangnick came in, he wasn't going to figure in his plans either. So they decided we're going to send him out on loan, and he still had, I think, 4 or 5 years left on his contract, plus an option of a further year. So Manchester United knew that the contract side of it was on their side. But if they were going to be in a position where they thought, right, this is definitely not working in the long run with regards to Van der Beek, let's try and get him to maybe go back to Ajax or maybe the Dutch league or the Spanish league, where maybe that kind of league is more suited to Donny van der Beek. But what ended up happening is, for whatever reason, maybe the deal that if Ajax were back in for him or a Spanish club were back in for him, if that deal didn't work for Manchester United with regard to the finances, for example, they didn't want to pay as much of a portion of the wages as, for example, a Premier League team might have wanted to, hence why that deal might not have worked out. So Everton came in and they decided, right, okay, it's a little bit of a risk though, because we have seen something in Van der Beek that at the moment he doesn't seem ready for the Premier League, because by deduction, they've not been picking him for whatever reason. Now, that could be because of the other players, but if there's an element of we don't feel Van der Beek is suited just now for the Premier League, then sending him to another Premier League club, you could see that potentially coming with it a risk. They bought him for £40 million. Now, he went to Everton and it didn't work out for him at all at Everton. I think he had a couple of injuries. He hardly played. He was in the team for the first few games when he made that loan move, and it just didn't work out for him at all. Then he's come back to Manchester United. He might have a chance this time simply because, it's almost a perfect storm for him in the sense that Erik ten Hag's now the manager at Manchester United, someone who knows him very well, someone who Van der Beek has played under, and Van der Beek will know the philosophy of this manager. But if it had been a different manager and he's come back and he still didn't figure in the plans, and United decided we need to just cut our losses and sell Van der Beek, what would he be worth on the market? Because he would have been in a team that he hadn't played for, barely, and then he had been on a loan spell, a club that would have gone all out to try and get him on loan. And then when he arrives at that club, they decide, no, he's not fitting here either. So from a £40 million player, you're not going to get anywhere near £40 million for him. So cutting a long story short, maybe is that what Tottenham are thinking with Hill? Maybe they're thinking, yes, we do see the talent there. Like you guys are saying, why didn't he get given a chance? For whatever reason, Tottenham might have decided we don't think he's suited for the Premier League. So we're going to send him maybe to a league where he is suited, so that when he does come back, his valuation will have more of a chance of staying high than if he stayed in the Premier League. Yeah,
it's a great comparison there. Jay, over to you.
Yeah, of course, another young player we saw out on loan last season was Pape Matar Sarr, of course, on loan at French club Metz. Do you think this is a guy, and again, we saw him plenty of times in pre-season, was really involved with Antonio Conte's pre-season. Do you think this is a player that will head out on loan again, or maybe is he part of Conte's plans this season?
So I think this one will probably get decided towards the end of the window, because I think Antonio Conte is waiting for Yves Bissouma to show that he's fully recovered from that bout of COVID that he had. Was he, just remind me, was he on the bench against Southampton?
Oh, good question. I'm going to check that, Dharmesh, what you're asking.
I'm sure I saw him. I'm sure I saw him come on and play. Did he?
I'm sure as part of the travelling squad.
I'm sure somebody is about to message us now and say, do your research. He was on the bench or something like that.
Yes, he was. So we get the comments flying through. Yes, he was on the bench.
Yes, thank you, Spursy.
Yeah.
So I think Antonio Conte just wants to make sure that Yves Bissouma is fully recovered from that bout of COVID, which led him to miss part of that preseason tour. So I think he's a little bit behind with regard to preparations for the new season compared to everyone else who was playing a full part in that preseason. And also the injury to Skip as well. It is not great news for Antonio Conte with regard to those midfield areas. So I think he's waiting to see whether those two players come back up to full speed. And if they do, then I think Papa Matar will be allowed to go on loan. But I think he's just going to keep him at the club just for the next week or two, potentially, and then make a more clear idea and a more clear decision once he knows the makeup of his squad, particularly in midfield. Because I think he still wants Sarr to get regular first-team football. Is he going to get that at Spurs? I'm not so sure because of the players that are there already.
Yep. What I am going to do before Jamie reads the last question to Dharmesh is I'm just going to invite our listeners, obviously viewers of the show at the moment. We've got nearly 1,000 of you watching us live. Thank you again for all your support for Last Word on Spurs. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you can for us. That'd be great. And like I say, if you want to throw in anyone you want to ask Dharmesh about, questions or whatever, we'll try and, like I say, throw these in towards the end of the show. There has been one Dharmesh that's come in from Mel, who's been keeping me very entertained all night. Mel asked, could we possibly ask Dharmesh, maybe Dharmesh giving us his opinion rather than any intel here, who Dharmesh, do you want to answer that one, Dharmesh? We can ask Dharmesh this one. Who will get the sack first, Dharmesh? Who do you think? You got an intel
do I get choices?
There's no multiple choice for Dharmesh. There's no multiple choice. Makes it even worse. Do you want us to give you some choices?
Yeah, go on. I don't want to answer this.
Well, I'll tell you what's funny. I think Lampard and Gerrard. I think Gerrard for me has got to start well at Villa this season. They spent a huge amount of money. I think he's under pressure. Personally, I can see Brendan Rodgers potentially walking. He hasn't yet made a single summer signing. He looks really, really frustrated in his press conferences. It's so nice.
Bruno Lage might be another one, of course. Okay. I just think this doesn't seem quite the right fit. Obviously, didn't get off to a good start on the weekend either, did they? I think that might be another shout for Bruno Lage at Wolves.
Yeah, great answers, Ricky, Jamie. I hope that answers your question, Mel.
And that is the way you do it on Sky Sports. So that's why Dharmesh has got all the reputation of me and Jamie have been absolutely mugged off there. Right, guys, feel free to send in any questions you've got. Let's go to Jamie to ask Dharmesh one of the final questions of the show. Over to you, Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, a pretty big question. Do you feel as though Antonio Conte will be kind of happy with the squad and he feels it's in a place where Spurs could challenge for the league? And also, how many more signings do you realistically think Spurs are going to make before the close of play on the 1st of September?
Signings wise, I wouldn't be surprised if that's it incoming. I think he wants to streamline the squad. There's a potential of one more, but it would have to be the right player. When we talk about someone like Zaniolo and how difficult that deal would be to do, can Tottenham challenge for the title? I don't think this season. What I would say, I saw a news conference with Antonio Conte the other day, and he was talking about the spending power of a club like Liverpool, who were able to spend 85 million all in for Darwin Núñez. Whereas if you look at the summer spending, I think Tottenham have actually spent more than Liverpool. But what I would say is this. When you look at Liverpool and City, they seem to be well ahead of everyone else. But they're in that position now where Manchester United used to be under Sir Alex Ferguson, when every single summer transfer window, Sir Alex Ferguson would evolve his squad rather than revolutionize his squad. So he would say, there are one or two players that I don't want anymore, and he would get rid of them, and then he'd bring in one or two players. It wouldn't normally be 5 or 6 leaving and 5 or 6 coming in. Now, Liverpool and City are in that position now where they are evolving all the time. So there might be 1 or 2 that leave and 1 or 2 that come in. And if they, for example, have a budget of £100 million, for example, a Liverpool and a City would be in a position now to say, foundations of the squad are fine. Let's get that one blue chip player in that's going to make the difference. That's going to change us from being thereabouts to there. Now, that's taken them a few years to get to. Since Pep Guardiola's come in 5 or 6 years ago, since Klopp's come in about 5 or 6 years ago, they've been building that with the structure that they've got at the club. Now, I know I'm not allowed to say the A word here, but Tottenham and the A word, from what I can see, are halfway through that timeline that Liverpool and City are at, but they're going towards that. Yeah. Now they've got to the point now, Tottenham and Arsenal, where then the last 2 windows, particularly Arsenal, they've spent big money and they've brought in lots of players. And Tottenham in this window, they've brought in lots of players. Effectively, Antonio Conte's first summer transfer window. But what they've done now is you can see that is Antonio Conte's squad. You're starting to see this is Paratici and Conte building this squad. So if you see another transfer window like this one, maybe in 1 or 2 summer transfer windows, when they have £100 million to spend, for example, Conte might think then, you know what? I'm not going to spend it on 5 or 6 different players. We need that one player that is going to just unlock everything to make us challenging simply for a top 4 finish to challenging for the title. Because make no mistake about it, Conte is there to win trophies. He is not there. The top 4 is not a trophy for him. No. Top 4 last season potentially could have been, because nobody really expected Tottenham to turn into a top 4 team by the end of the season. But what Conte did there makes Tottenham fans dream and think, if he did that then with barely his own squad, by simply bringing in 2 players, which kind of switched Tottenham's season with Bentancur and Kulusevski, what's he going to do when he's got a full pre-season behind him, when he's got 6 summer signings that are his signings and Paratici's signings? What can Tottenham achieve then? And like I said before, nobody that I've spoken to has said that Tottenham will be outside the top 4 next season. But Tottenham fans are now daring to dream. And they're now thinking, well, trophy number 1, could they actually challenge for the big trophies now as well? When you least expected it, Tottenham got to the Champions League final. You did not expect that to happen. No. Now, there's a squad there and there's a feeling there that something is happening at Tottenham that feels very, very different to previous seasons. It was like a dream when it was under Pochettino. Now it feels like, hold on, this is not just a dream. There's a manager there that we would never have thought would be managing this football club ever. And for the first time, even last season, when I see Tottenham play and I speak to their fans, and there's plenty of them at Sky, whereas before the instant reaction would be to blame a manager if there's a bad performance. Not once did I hear them say this is Conte's fault. They always said, we've got the manager. What are the players doing? Because he's doing everything right. It's the players' fault. I never heard that before, because it's always, oh, we've got the wrong manager. We haven't got this. This time, Tottenham fans really believe that they've got the right manager. More importantly, they've got the right structure, because they've got a sporting director who knows how Antonio Conte works. And in tandem, they are doing the business that Tottenham were dreaming of doing 2, 3, 4 seasons ago.
Dharmesh, you're inspiring us all here. We're getting all very, very excited. There's over 1,000 watching us here, and we're hearing Dharmesh Sheth on a Spurs channel talking about trophies and aiming for competing for a title. Isn't it wonderful? Dharmesh, is one name to bring to you. Very good friend of mine on the screen here, Alex Yuan, who says, anything on Memphis to pay's future? Anything's on Memphis to pay that you know of, Dharmesh? Anything Spurs related?
Sorry, Alex, not that I know of. There's a chance that Barcelona, I don't know what's going on at Barcelona at the moment. Just what they're trying to do with he could be one of those players that they do want to get off the books, and so that they can register all the other players that they've signed. So yeah, who knows? He could be even available on a free transfer.
Okay, interesting. And finally, also got Sam Thrush here, who says, any signings to help with our homegrown quota? And there's probably one name I can only really think of at the moment. And Jay, please help me if there's anyone else you can think of. It's probably Mark Gay here at Crystal Palace. I think he would fall under the homegrown quota. I know he's very highly rated. From what I understand, I think Chelsea have got an option to match any bid that comes in for Mark Gahey. Can you see Palace letting him go anytime soon? If I'm being honest with you, Dharmesh?
No. I can't.
Okay.
Funny things have happened, but
yeah,
I can't see Patrick Vieira sanctioning a deal that sees Mark Gahey go from Palace. Not this summer, no.
Yeah. People are loving that speech from you, Dharmesh, and you could probably kill everybody's hope if there is any here. We've had some comments saying any chance of Cristiano Ronaldo. Dharmesh, probably the most easiest rumor you'll ever have to kill in your 24 years. Sky. What do you? Come on.
No.
Finally, Dharmesh, we do want to end it on more of a funny note. Now, listen, many Spurs fans will remember, and how can we forget, of your infamous, your infamous appearance at a Spurs press conference with yourself, the well-known Simon Felstein and Maurizio Pochettino. I'm taking you back now a couple of years, Dharmesh. I've got to say, we're all family here. There's over 1,000 lovely Spurs fans watching live and giving so much love to you tonight. Tell us, if you can, go back now and your thoughts on your mindset about what that was like, that press conference. How was that for you, front centre stage of that press conference and then coming out of it after all of that?
Yeah. Interesting. I wasn't too popular on social media with the Tottenham fans after that, but look, it was at the time when Jose Mourinho had got sacked by Manchester United. I think it was December 2018, coming up to Christmas, I think it was, and all of the talk. I mean, the bookies' favourite was Pochettino was going to leave Spurs and go to Manchester United, and he was being bombarded with these questions the whole time. So I arrived at this news conference, and look, let me tell you how this works. Okay, so I get told I was doing that press conference. We normally get told at Sky Sports News the night before what our job's going to be the next day. So I'll get a phone call on, I think it was a Thursday night, to say, Dharmesh, tomorrow, don't come straight into the office, go straight to Tottenham's training ground to do the Maurizio Pochettino news conference. I said, oh, great, love it. Because I love Pochettino. He's just one of the loveliest people you've ever met, always answered your questions. So I just thought, right, if I'm going to be fine asking these questions about United. So what we normally do is in the morning, every morning at Sky Sports News, they have a planning meeting where they go through what's in the diary, what different jobs people are doing. So then they came to the Tottenham one and it was discussed. And I said, look, I think, it's still a live topic here. It would look odd if I didn't ask the question about United. And so off I went on my merry way to Hotspur Way, got into the news conference, and I spoke. I know Simon Felstein very, very well. I still speak to him now. And I spoke to him before, which is what we usually do. So we speak to the director of comms before the news conference, about half an hour before. He'll come into the room. He or she will come into the room and say, look, are there any questions that you're asking all the managers? Because there might be a topic of the day, for example, like sin bins is on the agenda. We're asking every Premier League manager whether there should be sin bins. So the head of comms will come up and say, look, are there any global questions like that? I said, there's nothing on that. But I said, he goes, what are you going to ask? I said, look, I'm obviously going to ask about the game. I think you were playing Everton. I could be completely wrong. So I said, look, I'm going to ask about the game. But I said, I'm going to have to ask about United. And Simon said, well, I can't. I'm just going to stop you asking. I said, well, that's your job, but I've got to do my job. So I'm going to ask the question. So there I was. So we normally start the news conference. So I started off, I just did the normal, what's the team news ahead of the game? And Pochettino was in a fantastic mood. He was great. He was answering all the questions. So then I started broaching the subject. And the way I was going to do it was because he'd been asked about it so many times in a previous news conference, because I think Tottenham had a midweek game. It might have been a League Cup game or something. And he'd been asked the question.
That's it. He was asked
a number of times. A number of times. So I said, I need to ask this question, but I need to be a little bit more subtle about it and ask it in a different way. Now, what had happened the night before? Now, this is going to make a few people laugh because I got so many replies about this because I couldn't get this question out. So Les Reed used to be the technical director at Southampton, and he was the technical director when Mauricio Pochettino was manager at Southampton. And he had said, I can't remember what program it was, and I was watching it, and he said that when there was all this rumor and conjecture about Mauricio Pochettino going from Southampton to Tottenham, not once did Mauricio Pochettino lose his focus on anything to do with his job. He was completely focused on Southampton. So the question that I was going to ask was actually a positive one, was going to be, look, Les Reed, your former technical director, said yesterday, and just as I started asking the question, Simon Fell says, no, because I kind of primed Simon beforehand that I was going to ask a question about Les Reed. That's how I was going to introduce it.
Yeah.
So once I started saying Les Reed, he was like, no, Dharmesh, no. I was like, what? And he just goes, this is just about the game. And I was like, well, then we just started having a bit of an argument. And I was like, well, look, if one of your players is signing a new long-term contract, that's nothing to do with the game, but you're going to want to share that positive news. So I can't just be asking about the positive stuff and not ask about the stuff that you don't want me to ask about. And so he goes, I kept asking the question. And I remember on social media after, because people take the mick out of me, they go, what did Les Reed say? What did Les Reed say? So I can finally tell you that's what Les Reed had said. And so my question was going to be, Les Reed said, when you were linked with the Tottenham job, when you were at Southampton, he said, not once did you lose your focus and not once were you distracted. So with that in mind, have you lost any focus or distraction amid all of the speculation was what my question was going to be, but I never got to ask it. And so it just kept going back and forth. And then Simon at one stage says, right, switch the cameras off. So the cameras went off and then it carried on off camera. And Simon's like, look, we're not going to carry on like this. I'm not going to have this news conference dominated by questions about Man United. And I'm arguing, look, it's on the agenda. A lot of people are talking about it. That's the only reason I want to talk about it. I've got to ask the question. I understand that you're trying to do your job, but if I came out of this news conference and I went back to the office and they asked me, what did he say about the United job? And I said, well, I didn't ask him. They'd be like, what?
You're
What do you mean
you're not doing your job. Yeah.
So it was good that I got the question, attempt of a question on camera because I was trying to ask a question. So then what happened? What happens at these news conferences, okay, is it's a Saturday game. So Friday is the news conference. And what they do is the broadcast section you can use straight away. Everyone can use it straight away. Then the papers have their own section, which is embargoed until 10:30, I think, that night. So once our section had finished, and I was frazzled by this point about what the hell has just happened here, yeah? So then Simon said, right, can we switch the cameras off? So switch the cameras off. And then the press guys and girls asked their questions. Now, we can't film that bit, but I can record it on my phone. So I basically got my phone, put it down on the desk and just press the record on it. Because we can't use the audio, but we can write from what he says from the press section on the website. We can use the quotes, but we can't run cameras or whatever or audio from it. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, we can use. Yeah. So I can take a recording of it, but not use it. So as I put my phone on the desk, right, there's Pochettino, there's Simon Felstein, and then as I put it there, because you remember Pochettino was putting his arm around Simon and he goes, you are the superstar of this press conference.
Yeah, you are the main man. You are the main man. Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
So I put my phone down there and he goes to Simon. He goes and looks at me. He goes, what was the question? And I was like, well, you want to know what the question was? And then Simon goes, no, we're not going to answer that. He goes, no, I want to know, what is the question? So I said, well, Maurizio, my question was going to be that Les Reed, your former technical director at Southampton, said that if that when you were linked with Tottenham, amidst all the speculation and rumor about that job, he said you were so professional that not once did you lose your focus. And what I want to know is, have you lost any focus or been distracted with all of this speculation linking you with the Manchester United job? And then Maurizio sort of just looked at Simon and looked at me and goes, "Yes, a good question, eh? It's a good question." I'm like, "What?" And then Simon, the cheek of it, sort of just said, yeah, it's a good question. And then Maurizio started joking and saying, "Hey, we switched the cameras back on. We asked the question." Right.
Dharmesh, I can tell you, honestly.
For all the grief that I got, I didn't actually get to tell the story. So I'm so glad 3.5 years on, I'm hoping now that Tottenham fans will forgive me and don't abuse me on social media like they did, because I was only trying to do my job.
Well, listen, I can tell you, Dharmesh, the comments have been pouring in here. Lots of love for you, saying, listen, people have learned so much in the last 10, 15 minutes of what it is like behind the doors at Sky. I must say, Dharmesh, for us to have you on Last Word on Spurs has been an absolute privilege and a pleasure. I'm sure Jamie would agree. What a fascinating interview, Jamie, and what a lovely story to end it with, right?
Yeah, amazing. Obviously, amazing listening to Dharmesh's insight, of course, and obviously amazing watching him for years on Sky Sports. So really, really great to talk to him today. And
Dharmesh, listen, you can see comments here pouring in for you. Great guy, Dharmesh. There's hand clapping, there's applause. We love you, Dharmesh. You're getting even a love you from Spurs fans now. The power of social media is incredible. Man. Honestly, if you see Dharmesh at all at any Spurs games, go and say hello to him. Be nice, be kind. Dharmesh, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Last Word on Spurs. So much love flying through from you here. For anybody at Dharmesh, I can't understand this to you. If anyone doesn't know where to find you or where you are, where can they find the wonderful work you do provide?
What do you mean?
Where can people find you? Where can people listen to you? Is it Sky? Is it purely just Sky Sports?
Yeah, Sky Sports News. My Twitter handle.
This is the plug-in part, Dharmesh. It's a chance to plug.
Yeah, so 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock, Monday to Friday, the transfer show. Myself and Carve. And look, we do get on. That's the one question I keep getting asked. Do I get on with Carve? He's a good mate of mine. It's all good. So, watch the transfer show 5 o'clock and 7 o'clock. You never know, there might be a bit of Tottenham news.
Fingers crossed. Dharmesh, listen, from me, it's been an absolute pleasure. Iconic to interview the wonderful Dharmesh Sheth on Last Word on Spurs. From the brilliant Jeremy Brown, from us all here, please keep safe, keep well. We're back with you tomorrow. Yes, a third show of the week. We are risking marriages here on Last Word on Spurs. Thank you so much for your time as always. Please, as always, keep safe, keep well, and come on, you Spurs.